t'assure les larmes que l'on verse. Ah yeah, j'ai tout grindé, j'ai mis dans mon perse. Ah yeah. J'ai l'œil, j'ai la vision, j'ai la vista, yeah. J'suis Alci à mon blast sur la liste, ah, yeah. J'ai des refs qui coupent H à coups de H, ah, yeah. Faut que tu le saches, beaucoup de gueuches remplies de fâche, ah, yeah. Main dans les poches, sous capuche, IT pêche, c'est la tête, j'veux ma sacoche, remplie de gueuches, remplie de cash. Ni la marre, ni Scott, ni Rocky, mais elle veut ma toffe, mon croquis. Le quotidien me tue, mais j'suis groggy. M'barre sous le soleil des tropiques, avec mon blé, avec ma bœuf, avec ma gosserait, mon gros kiff. Tout mon amour dans son body en doggy. J'ai pas dormi, j'ai qu'une barre. J'ai l'impression que je suis nulle part. Je me sens pas comme la plupart. Je vais m'isoler à plus tard. Je me fais un ster et un thé. Quand je rentre le soir éreinté. Quand je rentre le soir esquinté. Je me fais un ster et un thé. J'ai pas dormi, j'ai qu'une barre. Mais je peux pas tomber plus bas. Gros, la douleur ne tue pas. Je ne sais pas de quoi tu me parles. Tranquillement dans une tasse, je vois une gorgée, je tire une taf, je me fais un ster et un thé, yeah. Imagine tout ce que j'ai dans le crâne, yeah. Je décolle, je monte en grade, tout ce qu'on crame, se compte en grammes, yeah. Et s'il y a les stupes, j'ai encore du stock, alors je roule un stick, pendant qu'il mastique, personne ne me stoppe, c'est fantastique, ah yeah, je suis à part, ah yeah, je veux ma part, je tire une barre, de barbare, je veux le beurre, j'ai la part, je suis au charbon, je fais 2-3 ronds comme un de ces vendeurs de marron, je fume car le monde ne tourne pas rond, un grand pardon à mes darons, trop d'aigreurs dans ma tête, je pense aux erreurs qu'on a faites, mais je les ferai pas deux fois, pas le choix, pas le droit, je roule un doobie pour maintenant, je fume et j'oublie pour un temps, juste un tout petit court instant, j'ai pas dormi, j'ai qu'une barre, j'ai l'impression que je suis nulle part, je me sens pas comme la plupart, je vais m'isoler à plus tard, je me fais un ster et un thé, quand je rentre le soir éreinté, quand je rentre le soir esquinté, je me fais un ster et un thé, j'ai pas dormi, j'ai qu'une part, mais je peux pas tomber plus bas, gros la douleur ne tue pas, je ne sais pas de quoi tu me parles. Tranquillement dans une tasse, je vois une gorgée, je tire une taf, je me fais un ster et un thé.
Easy to pétasse.
Welcome to the Pipeline Podcast live stream. Tonight we're going over the mayoral debate in LA, specifically Spencer Pratt. So if you're familiar with LA, you might know the mayor is Karen Bass, and a lot of people have been pretty critical of her, saying she's done a bad job. You have the Palisades fire, which we're going to get into tonight. That song we played at the beginning of the stream is actually relevant to the fire. They claim that the guy who started the fire was listening to this song, and that's one of the reasons he decided to become an arsonist. The song here. But you also have like the LA riots that happened in LA last year, and Karen Bass was like hardly even able to admit they were riots, and it took her multiple days and also more than one death to even say like the rioters were violent. But now the kind of rhetoric they use is like, oh, it was, it was a really small percent of people in the city. You can't blame the whole city for that. And it's like, obviously, yeah, of course, it's always a really small percent. Why don't you do something about it? And then you also have the homelessness problem that we're going to get into. And you have a lot of NGO fraud that's going on in LA and California and blue states as a whole, like Minnesota as well. We've covered that on the channel. And Spencer Pratt is kind of the candidate running for LA mayor that's a counter to it. And so we'll go over sources of the other candidates, Karen Bass, and there's like a DSA girl, call him like super MAGA. But in reality, he's not super MAGA, but he is conservative because he just doesn't want to see the city go to the direction that it currently has been. So we're going to take a very, very deep dive into that tonight, and it's going to be a great time. And also will take a while, so heads up. The first thing we're going to do is, this is a Spencer Pratt TikTok, so he's used a lot of social media in his campaign to get a large following, to like spread the good word. And in this TikTok, he kind of lays out a lot of the gripes he has with Karen Bass and the city. And we're going to use this to start. And we have a couple sources we're going to go into that lead off from this TikTok, because he says a lot of things that might sound crazy or kind of outlandish. And we're going to look into them and kind of show you like Spoiler alert, one of them is that Karen Bass is a communist. We're actually going to get into that because it looks like it's true. So we're going to have a fun time exposing the communist takeover that is Karen Bass of LA.
Karen Basura is a communist. Now, when I was 19, 20, I was living in an apartment on Skid Row, getting my political science degree at USC. That's as LA as it gets, dude. But do you know what Karen Basura was doing at that age? You guessed it, going to Cuba to support the communist revolution and Fidel Castro's oppressive regime? What? Karen Basura is a card-carrying member of the Communist Front Group, the Venceremos Brigade, an anti-American communist solidarity organization in which she actively worked for years to undermine the U.S. and prop up the communist revolution in Cuba? Does this sound normal to you? Who in the heck spends their 20s supporting a violent communist dictatorship in a foreign country? What were you doing at night?
So he makes that claim. I'm sure if you haven't looked into it, you would hear him say that and say, oh, he's just the MAGA candidate. And of course, he's just going to say Karen Bass, who's the Democrat, is a communist. That's just a MAGA talking point. First of all, this guy isn't MAGA. And second of all, he's right. So we're going to look into this. It's the Venceremos Brigade, which Karen Bass was a part of, originally founded in 1969. And what they would do is they were a political organization that stood in solidarity with Cuba. They were like a political organization in the United States that wanted better relations with Cuba. They were like communist sympathizers, but it goes deeper. And Karen Bass was a part of this. We have it at the bottom. Notable members, Karen Bass, mayor of LA. So you have a communist as the mayor of LA, and it gets worse. So we have a New York Times article that's talking about an FBI investigation from 1977. And they're straight up saying the purpose of the Venceremos brigades is the recruitment of individuals who are politically oriented and who someday may obtain a position, elective or appointive, somewhere in the U.S. government, which would provide the Cuban government with access to political, economic, and military intelligence.
19 years old. Some reports have shown that Karen Basura's communist organization was actually involved in intelligence training ops on behalf of the Cuban regime, and some of the members actually...
And that's like true. That's like actually true. They were investigated by the FBI for it.
Bombed the U.S. Capitol in 1983. There's a legit...
Yeah, like these people you could almost say they're like terrorists. You could almost label them as a terrorist organization.
Legitimate possibility that Karen Basura is a literal communist spy, which actually might explain why such an experienced politician has been so effective at destroying America's greatest city in just a few short years.
And you would think he's exaggerating there, but if you were a communist sympathizer and your job was to get high up in the U.S. government to destroy the country, and then you look at how Karen Bass has handled her term in L.A., and that's exactly what you would do if you were a communist trying to destroy the city, right? She's done a terrible job. We'll go into the failures during the Palisades fire, which there was a lot. And we'll go into like the homelessness crisis. We'll go into the NGO fraud and look into it tonight, all these things.
Now you know what her experience is. Some of you may not remember, but she was actually the front runner to become Joe Biden's VP pick for 2020. But that went up in flames almost immediately once people dug up her commie past and saw her foreign sympathies in statements following Fidel Castro's death when she called it a great loss. She used to refer to Castro as Comandante en Jefe. And for those of you who don't habla español, that means commander-in-chief. Now, I don't know about you, but the President of the United States is always my commander-in-chief, but not Karen Basura. Her commander-in-chief is the communist dictator of Cuba. Right now, Cuba's in the news because the oppressed people who have suffered under the horrific communist regime.
So we're going to go into this a little bit. He's saying that, Cuba has like an oppressive regime, and there's like a critique there that people on the left have. They'll say, oh, that's because of the sanctions by the United States. That's the reason there's such a shithole. But then the other side of the argument is no, because even if they weren't sanctioned, we've seen examples of communism in the past, and it leads to a lot of deaths as well. And this kind of argument but it's a pretty hot topic nowadays, and people even say that's the next place Trump's gonna invade. Like after Iran, it's gonna be Cuba. And I want to show you two videos. So these are like two young influencers in the media sphere. Hassan is like on the left. This is Nick Shirley on the right. And recently, a lot of these influencers went to Cuba. Most notably with Hassan, it was some kind of, I don't know, Democratic Socialist of America, or like some kind of blue movement, blue NGO that like funded their trip. And basically, Hassan goes to Cuba, talks about how oppressed the people are because of the sanctions. But Nick Shirley, he's like a conservative influencer, goes to Cuba, and he makes his video about just asking people if they like their communist government and how they feel like openly talking about that. And he gets like spied on by the Cuban government and ends up leaving early. And he makes a video about it, saying I was almost taken hostage in Cuba. So it's a pretty hot topic right now. And I do just want to show you like clips of these videos real quick.
She said that school was reduced down to 1 day for many of these places, depending on, the availability, depending on the energy grid, I think. And most importantly, due to how difficult it is to travel, there have been a lot of restrictions.
They're having energy issues right now where like they can't properly power the hotels, and well, the hotel that Hassan stayed at they could, but they can't properly power the schools in the hospitals. And Hassan makes a video about it saying like, hey, people should like help out the Cuban people because, it's the US's fault because they did all the sanctions. That's why the people aren't doing well. But then someone on the right, like Nick Shirley, would say, well, it's actually the communist government's fault for being an oppressive regime. Obviously, other countries aren't going to work with them or trade with them. So we can just watch a little clip of his experience in Cuba.
When this comes out, or if it does, we are currently being told by Cuban intelligence here in Havana, Cuba. I came here. I've been wanting to make a video for so long about life in communism and showing people what communism is like in a place like Cuba, for instance. Came here to make this video, and when people think about communism, they typically just think about how communism is supposed to make everything equal, whether it be the amount of money someone makes or how food's distributed and how the markets are then controlled by the government. However, something that people do not think about, including myself, is how in communism, they do not have freedom of speech. They don't have freedom of press. And therefore, they want to make sure.
So Nick Shirley is like more of a conservative influencer, and that's what he makes his video to Cuba about. So you have a very different dynamic between the political parties when it relates to Cuba. You have people on the left that are more sympathetic to the Cuban people, but then people on the right are saying, first of all, their government has to step up and stop being an oppressive regime. And that kind of takes us back to Karen Bass, who is legitimately a communist sympathizer, but she's made it all the way, to become mayor of LA, which is a pretty powerful position. But then you look at her track record, and it looks like the city might actually be burning to the ground. So we're going to get into that. Let's play a little bit more of this Spencer Pratt TikTok.
Are rising up to fight for freedom. You'll notice how much Latino immigrants and especially Cuban immigrants hate communism because they know firsthand how evil communism is. They have experienced the empty store shelves, the decrepit infrastructure, the choking censorship and surveillance, the secret police thugs, the death and destruction that Fidel Castro and other commie dictators ushered in. Communism is responsible for more mass death in just the last century than anything else in the history of the world. Over 100 million people have been.
So he's saying it really well, but he's basically explaining why. I mean, this is why other countries don't deal with Cuba. This is why Cuba has these sanctions in the first place. But people on the left are kind of going to say, oh, you should be sympathetic to the people. It's not the people's fault that their government is like this.
Killed by communist regimes in China, Cambodia, the Soviet Union, from forced famines, purges, gulags. Communism is an evil, anti-human ideology dressed up as some idealistic form of equity and fairness, and yet somehow it always ends up with millions of people dying in forced labor camps or starving to death. Communism is just a religion of malcontents where instead of worshiping a righteous God, they worship the state. And whatever the state says, goes. We don't learn enough about the evil scourge on our planet, and communism is genuinely evil. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It preys upon the malcontents of society to fuel the revolution. But America never fell victim to this ideology. We didn't have enough malcontents to fuel the revolution in America.
So there we go. That's kind of the first thing we wanted to go into with this LA race for mayor. We wanted to first go over Karen Bass's ties to the Cuban government. And it's very, very possible that she was recruited to infiltrate the US government. This is a real thing that the FBI investigated. Like, this is not a conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory would be like saying for sure she's like a communist and she's trying to destroy the US government. That would be a conspiracy theory. But to say that she has ties to organizations that are sympathetic to Cuba that did have an objective to do this is not a conspiracy theory. That's a real thing. And she's the mayor of LA right now. And then this is just, there's one part in that TikTok where he says, he talks about Karen Bass's statement when Fidel Castro died. And she expressed her condolences to Commandant en Jefe, which is like Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro. It's like all right here. So, I mean, if you want to talk about someone who's a communist sympathizer, look no further. That's exactly what one would say. It looks like Karen Bass is. Here we're going to go into the homeless numbers a little bit. As of 2025, there were 72,000 homeless people in LA. And if you're familiar with that, you've heard of like Skid Row. Like there are entire city blocks, most of them downtown LA, where there's just it's like a tent city. There's just like homeless people everywhere. And it's a serious health hazard. And it also is like a safety hazard for like children or people like that. And it discourages like development in the city. So you have a lot of people like leaving the city because how are you going to like open up a business when there's like tents outside everywhere? So it like debilitates the retail market. And then we also have the riots. If you're unfamiliar with the LA riots, it was basically when ICE went into LA and like the city started shooting at them. Like we do have examples of that in this. It's like a little mini series that we did. It's the first playlist we made where we kind of watch them escalate day over day, like day by day. And that gets into like other things like the police force is severely understaffed in LA, and so is the fire department. Here we have a pretty good clip. Spencer Pratt, he goes on Joe Rogan and he talks about the Palisades fire. We're going to spend some time getting into that. I believe we have like 6 sources that cover this. Basically, the fire was completely preventable, and there was a lot of things that happened that make you kind of think this doesn't seem like an accident. This almost seems like severe negligence to the point where maybe someone wanted it to happen and let all these things kind of happen on purpose. It goes pretty deep, so this is a very good starting point.
I went and met with the chief of the U.S. Forest Service and talked to him for a few hours. This guy, Chief Garcia, is one of the most famous fire chiefs from the hot shots, and I quizzed him, and he told me this was not a surprise. He said they all have a map. I don't forget the name of this map that it goes to all cities and emergency personnel. They have photos. You look at them. He showed them to me. Everything is bright red leading up to January 7th. Bright red. They knew this was coming to the point where Chief Garcia had all of his firefighters on the tarmac, kitted up, in their helicopters. He said his whole team was standing by their computers because it was so obvious this fire was coming based off of, if you want to say, climate change because it had not rained. It was record dry. It's just an excuse. And then the big one that everyone falls for to this day that is the best propaganda ever is hurricane winds. We were told, Newsom's doing the thing and he's saying that winds would come.
Yeah, so this is something I hadn't heard of. So I don't live in LA, so I wasn't really following the Palisades fire. I didn't even know that they found the guy who started the fire. I thought it was just a wildfire until I started looking into this video. But he's claiming that the city officials were saying there was hurricane level winds, and we need to look into that. This is an LAFD report on the Palisades fire, and it says right here, they're claiming that there was Category 1 hurricane winds that fueled the fire. And this is true if you're counting 2 days after the fire started, which is kind of misleading because they're trying to claim that the hurricane winds fueled the fire, which would make you think, oh, like that's how it got out of control. But the hurricane winds weren't until 2 days after it had gotten out of control. And we have more information on this. So what is a Category 1 hurricane wind? That's what they claimed the wind speeds were in the LAPD fire report. They claimed the fire was fueled by Category 1 hurricane winds. A Category 1 hurricane wind is 74 miles per hour. And then we can just very easily look, like let's look up a weather report of the Palisades on the 7th. And that's when the Palisades fire got out of control. That's when it really, really started. The official narrative is it was lit on the 1st. It got put out, but it stayed lit under the ground for 7 days. And then on the 7th is when it took off and started burning all the houses and stuff. And we have the National Weather Service reporting the highest wind in the Pacific Palisades on January 7th was 38 miles per hour, which is not Category 1 hurricane winds, which means the official LAPD report on the fire is wrong. You have either negligence or someone doing this on purpose to cover their ass. And it kind of takes us back to the whole point of this video is to just show you the city of LA looks to be dysfunctional, and Karen Bass potentially could be doing it on purpose, or she really is just that bad at her job. And that's why you have someone like Spencer Pratt. Fun fact, his house got burned down in the Palisades fire, and you just have him saying, all right, this is ridiculous. We just need someone with common sense to come and run the show, be the mayor for a little bit, get these things fixed, because it turns out that just some guy can light a few fires, burn half the city to the ground, and even a year later, you don't even have city officials that are competent enough to figure out what happened or assign blame or responsibility correctly or do a proper investigation without trying to cover their own ass. And not even to mention all the fire prevention tactics that could have been in use, like the water reservoirs should have been full, but most likely due to budget reasons they weren't. And there's just so many things going on here. And you have Spencer Pratt calling it all out. And when he actually says it, it sounds crazy, but you look into all this stuff and it's true. You have Karen Bass, who's a known communist sympathizer. You have the LAFD doing a bad job with the investigation and also a bad job with the fire prevention, although that could be due to budget cuts. That might not be their fault. But to have city officials lying about the winds during the fire is not good, especially when these reports are going to be used in the court case against the arsonist who started the fire. But you don't even have trustworthy officials to do proper reports because the city is that dysfunctional. And in my opinion, that's a huge problem. Next, we're going to get into the arsonist. This is a picture of him. So the official narrative is he got dumped by some girl on January 1st, which is New Year's. Keep in mind, on New Year's, a lot of people are already lighting off fireworks. And LA is a very dry area, so they're prone to forest fires. So the official narrative is he got dumped on New Year's. drove around the Palisades, lighting things on fire with his lighter. And 7 days later, one of the things he lit on fire, like really got, if you believe the LAFD, it was the winds that kind of ignited the fire 7 days later. And that's how it went out of control. But what it looks like it happened is it started like a small forest fire on January 1st. The firefighters came, blew it out, but it was still like smoking underneath all the brush. But they were being lazy, or it could be because they were understaffed and didn't have time to like circle back to it, that they didn't put it out fully. And so 7 days later, it reignited and started the Palisades fire. And that's the official narrative. And then you have these people that are in charge of doing this investigation. You know, people don't want to take responsibility. Some people also maybe don't want to blame others. And that's why you're getting these, like, there's an ATF report that hasn't been released yet that we're going to cover a little bit soon. That apparently is like only 1 page when it needed to have more information. You also have the LAFD report where it straight up lies about the hurricane winds. And it's a lot of stuff like that. And so this LA Times article kind of talks about the arsonist, and we're going to dig through this. It has some good information. So first it says the arsonist. He has like a very complicated last name. He's accused of starting the Lockman fire in Pacific Palisades, and that's the fire that like turned into the Palisades fire, on January 1st, which smoldered underground for a week before exploding into the deadly Palisades fire. And we have one of the firefighters that were on scene for that fire. So he helped put out the fire on January 1st, and we have his testimony. And this is from a deposition from this case. And it's very important that we listen to this so we can try to get to the bottom of exactly what happened during the Palisades fire. So let's take a listen. It's just near the end of the video.
200 to 300 feet.
In your experience, can yellow dot label Palisades fire origin, do you have any basic?
Okay, sorry.
And where we see this yellow dot label Palisades fire origin, do you have any basis to give me any estimate as to how far that is?
200 to 300 feet.
In your experience, can an ember blow 200 to 300 feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did anybody ever come to interview you in connection with an after-action report for the Lockman fire?
No, sir. I thought that was kind of weird. I feel like an accurate report would have involved interviewing people who were actually on the scene that day. That was kind of weird. I feel like an accurate report would have involved interviewing people who were actually on the scene that day.
So he's saying he's a firefighter, LAFD right there. You can see it on his badge. He was there the day the fire started, according to the official narrative on January 1st, and nobody during the investigation for the fire ever talked to him, ever interviewed him about it.
Go ahead and say it. I saw some stuff that didn't line up with what I saw coming out from my leaders. ATF. This ATF report was 76 pages long. Do you know how many pages there was on the Lockman fire? Do you know?
Tell me.
1.
And so he's saying for the Lockman fire, which is the one that turned into the Palisades fire, the ATF report was only 1 page. And what it most likely is the ATF not wanting to assign blame because they know if they do like a proper, 67-page report, which is what like the other ones were, other past reports have been, it might get some of these firefighters who are already like severely understaffed. It might get them in trouble. It might make them liable. Because what it looks like happened is during that Lockman fire on January 1st, they didn't fully put it out because of like budget restraints or maybe even water restraints or just being like understaffed because the city's dysfunctional. And what that means is when this case goes to trial and they're trying to prove that the arsonist like is actually guilty, they're not going to have as much evidence because a lot of these people that need to do proper reports, don't want to get involved. They don't want to take charge. Next, we have a video. It's hard to find this guy, but his name is Kenny Cooper, and he is the special agent at the ATF that is in charge of the Palisades fire. So in this deposition here, he talks about that 1-page ATF report
76 pages long. Do you know how many pages there was on the Lockman fire? Do you know? Tell me. 1.
So he's saying the ATF report on the Lockman fire is only 1 page. I cannot verify this because that report is not public yet. But with the court case, I think it will become public at some point. It just isn't yet. So I don't know if that's actually true or not. But assuming he's not lying in his deposition, this guy right here in the gray suit, that's Kenny Cooper, the guy that the ATF special agent that made the report. And he's not a very public person, but we do have him doing a press conference about this, about the arsonist. And so let's listen to him say his words.
Service for their hard work in this investigation. I'm going to turn it over now to Kenny Cooper, who's the special agent in charge of the ATF Los Angeles Field Office.
Good morning. My name is Kenny Cooper. I'm the special agent in charge of ATF's Los Angeles Field Division. Today marks a significant moment in a long road to justice for our community. After more than 8 months of tireless, meticulous work, I stand here with our partners, proud to announce an arrest in connection to the devastating Palisades fires that claimed lives, destroyed homes, and shook this community to its core.
And keep in mind, this is the guy, he's coming to you right now. I mean, the date is 7 months ago, October 8th, 2025, saying, we caught the guy that started the fire on January 1st, which is New Year's, a day that is very well known for people to launch fireworks. And it's also well known that LA is a dry area and they don't do a lot of fire prevention like controlled burns. They don't do that anymore because, you know, they want to protect the plants. So keep all that in mind when this guy tells you that they know who started the fires.
Jonathan Rindernesh, age 29, residing in Melbourne, Florida, was taken into federal custody by ATF special agents, a Los Angeles City Fire Department investigator, and a Los Angeles police detective. This partnership and arrest is significant in the 3 agencies working hand in glove to get this investigation.
And I'll say he does sound nervous.
Rinderneck, as the U.S. Attorney mentioned, is charged under Title 18844F, malicious destruction by means of a fire of real property owned by an organization receiving federal financial assistance.
So yeah, they charged him on burning property, like basically burning like an area of a park that receives federal assistance. But that doesn't necessarily prove that that's the guy that's really responsible for all of the Palisades fire. You have a lot of different people that should be taking some blame here. And it kind of just, again, shows how dysfunctional the entire city is. And of course, the mayor has to take some responsibility for that. It's not just her. Like, the dysfunction goes like citywide throughout all of these officials. Then I want to get into this arsonist a little bit. It's kind of a really funny story. So this guy, Jonathan, he grew up in France, and they're trying to say he was motivated by like Luigi Mangione, the guy who shot the healthcare CEO in the back, and saw Luigi as a Robin Hood-like figure. And they're trying to say that this Jonathan guy thought, oh, you know, he would be doing everybody a favor by burning up like a rich neighborhood or just destroying property and being a vigilante. And they said that he was angry, intense, and driving erratically, and he was pissed off about the world, and he had just got dumped by his girlfriend, who was like a coworker, on New Year's Eve. And so they're saying he was just mad, he got dumped, he was driving around, started some fires with like a Bic lighter, and that's how the fire started. But in reality, one guy with a Bic lighter shouldn't be able to start a fire that destroys like neighborhoods. There are like prevention measures that should be in place to prevent that. And then this part's kind of fun because it doesn't make sense. So authorities allege in their brief that he was stewing over being in the neighborhood of his ex-lover and listening to a French rap song that evoked images of fire in its music video. I do want us to reread that. They were saying he was listening to a French rap song. So like when you listen to music, you like listen to it with your ears hear things. And authorities are alleging that rap song that he was listening to evoked images of fire in its music video, which doesn't, what they're saying doesn't make sense, because if you're listening to music, you're not watching the video. And so they're saying, since that song that he was listening to, since it had images, it evoked images of fire in the music video, that promoted his arsonist tendencies, I guess. But if you're just listening to the song, which we'll play it a little bit here, first of all, I don't know what it's saying because it's in French, but in the music video, it doesn't really evoke a lot of images of fire. And if you listen to the song, it doesn't really make you want to go burn things. So I kind of think it's a stretch for the authorities to allege this. It looks like they're just trying to put all the blame on this guy, when in reality, it's like the dysfunctional, underfunded city that probably should take a little bit more responsibility for letting this fire happen.
Le sang, la sueur, les larmes que l'on verse, ah yeah, j'ai tout. Le sang, la sueur, les larmes que l'on verse, ah yeah, j'ai tout grindé, j'ai mis dans mon perse, ah yeah. J'ai l'œil, j'ai la vision, j'ai la vista, yeah. J'suis Alci à mon blast sur la liste, yeah. J'ai des refs qui coupent H à coups de H, ah.
So you see like some signs of fire.
Yeah, main dans les poches, sous capuche, Haïti pêche, c'est la tête, j'veux ma sacoche, remplie de gueuche, remplie de cash. Ni la marre, ni Scott, ni Rocky, mais elle veut ma toffe, mon croquis. Le quotidien me tue, mais j'suis groggy. M'barre sous le soleil des tropiques, avec mon blé, avec ma bœuf, avec ma gosserait, mon gros kiff. Tout mon amour dans son body en doggy. J'ai pas dormi, j'ai qu'une barre, j'ai l'impression que j'suis nulle part. J'me sens pas comme la plupart, j'vais m'isoler à plus tard. J'me fais un ster et un thé, quand je rentre le soir éreinté, quand je rentre le soir esquinté. J'me fais un ster et un thé, j'ai pas dormi, j'ai qu'une part.
But really not a whole lot. So you see them like smoking. I mean, that technically is fire, but that's kind of a stretch for authorities to say like, oh, he's lighting a joint. That's what makes him an arsonist. In the beginning, you see like, it's like fire in his eyes almost. Like right here. He's got that burning sensation. And they're trying to say, this is responsible for the Palisades fire. It was the song this guy was listening to that made him want to become an arsonist, which is kind of ridiculous, in my opinion. Kind of a stretch. I think what makes more sense is there's two reservoirs that were empty. You have the understaffed fire department not fully putting out these fires, and then you have lackluster fire prevention because not enough funds are going to the firefighters in LA. There's a lot of funds that are getting defrauded from the government by NGOs for like homelessness purposes, when homelessness in the LA isn't really getting much better. Here is just one example of like LA fraud. So it's a executive director of South LA based charity arrested on a federal complaint alleging 23 million swindled of homelessness funds. And this isn't the only one. This is just one of many. So you have an executive director of one of these NGOs. They're getting slapped with a federal charge for stealing 23 million in homelessness funds. And this stuff seems to be happening a lot. Here, this one was pretty viral. So this is Nick Shirley, and he talks about the Medicare fraud in LA. There's some crazy statistic, like 1/5 of all Medicare dollars go to LA. Like there's a lot of like healthcare fraud in the city going on. And it's just one more instance of all the fraud in LA, in California, in other blue states as well, like Minnesota. This is worth watching. We'll give it a watch. Just to kind of show you like more instances of like LA being completely dysfunctional. And then when you see Spencer Pratt calling it out and he sounds crazy because he's just saying it all at one time, like it does sound crazy, but you start looking into it and all this shit is true.
Here in Van Nuys, California, massive fraud is taking place with hospice. For instance, this location, Miracle Healing Hospice, billed over $1.3 million Medicare paid them $966,000. Something interesting about this location. If you come right here to Miracle Healing Hospice, and if you want to knock on the door, nobody's going to answer because nobody's actually inside. And so this right here is a prime example of the millions that eventually accumulate to billions of dollars of fraud taking place here inside of California.
So basically, if I understand this fraud right, I'm not sure how all of the Medicare fraud is going down, but the allegations are you set up like a fake hospice center and you find people that qualify for hospice, you try to steal their like Medicaid information and you just sign them up and bill Medicaid. Meanwhile, the person who you're claiming is on the hospice program like just doesn't have any knowledge of it because the bill is just getting sent straight to Medicaid. Medicaid is paying these hospices. These hospices set up like fake office fronts here that are just empty on the inside. That's kind of the grift. And then you have people in the LA government that potentially are communist and want to see the destruction of the United States, so they're okay with all these grifted taxpayer funds. Or you have people in the government that are scared to be called racist because a lot of these hospices that are doing the fraud are immigrants. They're like immigrant services. And you have people saying, oh, you know, they're just struggling immigrants. Don't look into that. That can't be fraud because, you know, they're scared to be called racist. Next up, there's, this was the first debate with Spencer Pratt for the LA mayor. So it was Spencer Pratt, Karen Bass, and the other lady, I actually forget her name, Nithya Raman. These are like the three leading candidates for the mayor of LA. This was the first debate. There was a second debate scheduled, but everyone but Spencer Pratt dropped out of the debate. So the debate was canceled. And it's pretty obvious that to say, like, if you watch this debate, they obviously dropped out because they got destroyed by Spencer Pratt. And they realized if they did another debate with him, their numbers would go down. It would make it harder for them to win the election. So they decided we're not going to debate because our odds are better if we don't debate this guy because we'll lose the debate. And I do recommend you watch the debate, even if you don't live in LA. It's just, it was pretty good. And there's two hilarious parts that we need to talk about, that we need to cover in this debate.
Consider failures of the current administration on this issue. You advocate for what some have called get help or get out of the way. What is that and how do you do it?
I don't know who made up that name. First off, I just want to say, Councilwoman Robin acts like she doesn't have any authority with this homelessness. She was the third most powerful person in city council. She runs the homeless housing thing. She acts like this is just Mayor Bass. First off, inside safe, I like to say inside safe makes all of us outside unsafe. The reality is no matter how many beds you give these people, they are on super meth. They are on fentanyl. The DEA statistic says 93% of this is a drug addiction problem.
And that's true too. I don't have a source pulled up, but yes, the DEA says 93% of the homeless people in LA, I believe, specifically LA, are addicted to drugs.
Nithya, Councilwoman Robin's plan for treatment first, I will go below the Harbor Freeway tomorrow with her and we can find some of these people she's going to offer treatment for. She's going to get stabbed in the neck. These people.
Yeah, so I wanted to cover that because he says that in a live debate. And a lot of people that live in the city or just the country kind of agree with what he's saying. Like, sure, you want to spend millions of dollars trying to help out these homeless people, but just like, why don't you just take that money you're going to spend on all these grifting NGOs, try to show up, figure out a plan with these drug addicts, and they're just going to say, give me the money. Like they don't want to do any of these rehabilitation programs. They just want to go do drugs like on the street.
Problem. Nithya, Councilwoman Robin's plan for treatment first, I will go below the Harbor Freeway tomorrow with her and we can find some of these people she's going to offer treatment for. She's going to get stabbed in the neck. These people do not want a bed. They want fentanyl or super meth. These ideas cost us over $400 million to house for 70, what did you say? 3,000 people for $400 million? This is absolute failure.
Yeah, and again, that's another true thing. They spent $400 million to house 3,000 people, and like you break down the math on that, $400 million to house 3,000 people, which is like one of these stupid like DSA plans for the homeless people in LA. It turns out that you're spending over $100,000 per person per homeless person, which really is just like a violent drug addict that needs rehabilitation, that needs to like detox. Like that's unfortunately what it is. And in the meantime, you make these homeless programs like voluntary. So if these drug addicts want to go do drugs, they can just leave and go do drugs on the street, and no one's really enforcing them to like quit, shooting up like with needles on the street, like next to kids or families, which creates like a biohazard. And then also when you have violent homeless drug addicts everywhere, crime is going to spike up as well. And so maybe spending $100,000 like per homeless person isn't the best solution. You could almost bribe them with like half that money to say like go rent a place for a year and go, don't be violent. You're almost better off just giving them that money so they can go buy their drugs and not have to like steal things, or they can go house themselves and not have to be homeless.
It's an absolute failure for both of them. They're a team.
So, Councilmember Rahman, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I want to just say to everybody who's watching today, you're going to watch today as Mayor Bass and Spencer Pratt attack me because they want to run against each other in the general election. Each of them thinks that...
And that's the DSA candidate. That's how out of the loop she is. She has no idea how people really feel.
running against each other is what's going to help them win. And they don't want to run against me because my ideas, which are based on real results in my district, which are based on real data, a real analysis of the system, and a focus on accountability and using every dollar as effectively as possible, which we have done in my district. I want to take this citywide. This is why this is happening today.
Councilmember Rahman, we're out of time. I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to respond to this.
Can I would
Mr.
love
Pratt,
to
I'm going to start with
Thank
you, and then I'm going to go to Mayor Bass.
First off, Mayor Bass and I are definitely not working together. I blame this person for burning my house and my parents' house.
You could actually hear like audible laughs like in the debate crowd, which is hilarious. He's like, first off, we're definitely not working together. And he goes into it a little more. We're going to watch this.
In my town and all my neighbors down. I am not working with Mayor Bass. Second off, if I wanted to run against anybody, it would be the council member who is terrible. Mayor Bass has at least been a mayor for almost 4 years and has, as she talked about earlier, the unions, all the unions endorsed Mayor Bass.
Yeah,
it's easier.
And that's true. Karen Bass has like the police unions, and like the firefighter union, like backing her. And so he's saying like, I would never work with Karen Bass. Like I would rather run against the terrible city council member. And there's one more clip from this debate. Let me pull it up that we have to watch. This is pretty funny as well. And this is why Karen Bass and this council member, Nithya Raman, dropped out of the debate, because they just got completely destroyed by a guy that just goes up there. His house got burned in the Palisades fire, and he's just calling out the dysfunction in the city, saying like, guys, we need to fix this right now. Like I need my house to get rebuilt. Like this shit, it just is not working in the city.
Of respond to that vision of Los Angeles. This is a MAGA Republicans idea of what Los Angeles looks like. This is really not.
That's the part really right there.
I mean, I don't.
So she calls him a MAGA Republican, and he just puts his hands up like, "Ooh, I'm the boogeyman," and he's not even like MAGA. It's just in LA, if you're someone that wants to like gut all the NGO fraud with the like homelessness spending, or you want to make the city function again and you like care about the police force or the fire department, like that just makes you a Republican in LA. And she takes it so far to call him MAGA when he's like very much not. And he just puts his hands up like, oh my God, MAGA, you said it. It's so scary. It's hilarious.
I'm not sure how to respond to that vision of Los Angeles. This is a MAGA Republicans idea of what Los Angeles looks like. This is really not.
He's so funny.
Really not the city that I love so much.
But yeah, and that's why like they both dropped out of the debate, Nithya Raman and Karen Bass, because they just can't show up in a room and try to debate like their strategy, their arguments, their policy against someone that just wants the city to function properly. Like they can't even do it. So their best bet to win this election is to drop out of the last debate. So Spencer Pratt is the only one that didn't drop out of the debate because no one can debate him. And when you're trying to vote when you're trying to figure out who the better candidate is, it usually is the one that is willing to debate. It's not the one that can't debate. A phrase we use on the channel a lot is another leftist that can't debate, because this seems to be kind of a theme. So you have Karen Bass and Nithya Raman, both like liberal, both Democratic leaning, are just, two more leftists that can't show up and debate like their policy because it doesn't make sense. And it's kind of been proven with Karen Bass as the incumbent not doing the best job in LA. Here we have some very funny AI campaign videos for Spencer Pratt's campaign. He's posted a couple of these, and a lot of people are saying they're controversial. It's also started a whole debate, like, should political people that are campaigning, political candidates, be able to use AI ads for like hit pieces? Because that's basically what this is. A lot of people say like this AI ad is distasteful. A lot of other people say it's hilarious. So we're gonna watch it because it is funny. And we probably won't watch the whole thing because it gets kind of cringe. But Spencer Pratt releases these like AI campaign videos, and some of them are pretty based.
Please, I'm begging you. There's homeless drug addicts in front of the schools. My children aren't safe.
Look, if you were a transgender migrant, I could get you a free pussy.
Let's move the drug addicts closer.
Bass already solved crime. I endorse her.
Next!
Please, I just want to rebuild my home. It's been over a year.
Mom, look!
This is a machine. If we want to burn this town to the ground,
Feel so close.
you can do it, Spencer!
There you go. You got Marco Rubio getting in on it. The rest just turns into kind of a music video, so we're going to skip it. But it's pretty funny. Here we have this is a CBS morning interview with Spencer Pratt. This took place the day after the first debate. And again, this interview is worth watching. It's pretty good. They do it outside of where his house burned down. And keep in mind, the Palisades fire was 15 months ago. And like they haven't even started rebuilding his house yet. And that just goes to show like even more dysfunction with the city. Like you have a catastrophic event in the city and these people like still aren't really being taken care of properly. We go into conspiracies like this on the channel all the time where they're doing it as a land grab. You make a fire, do as much damage as possible so all the people that live there lose everything, move out, and you can redevelop the area, give, good contracts out to people that you have interests with. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but you look at the lack of accountability with the fire, you look at how preventable the fire was, you look at how they haven't been able to rebuild as fast as they should be able to due to things like bureaucracy. And you start to ask, like, why is all this happening? Why is everybody so incompetent? It could be monetarily like related. We've covered that with the Maui fires, and we've even talked about it on the channel with a couple other instances as well. But this is less of a conspiracy video and more about kind of just like the downfall of LA and how a right-wing switch up for like the mayor could really benefit the city right now. And it looks like it's this guy, Spencer Pratt, who's like the LA local that is just talking like common sense. And people are starting to listen, I think. But anyway, he has a really good statement on like what he thinks the future of LA could look like in this interview. And we're going to check it out.
Because now that I've been having all these meetings and these powerful people that want LA back to what it should be, they're like, this should be better than Dubai. This should be the #1 city on the planet. So I used to say in my messaging, I just want LA to be back to the LA I grew.
So that's just a statement that he says. It's pretty short and sweet, but he's saying LA should be the #1 city on the planet. It should be like Dubai. And he's 100% right. I mean, LA is like where Hollywood comes out of, like the biggest and best movies, most popular films in the world. And it also has like the perfect environment. It has, it has the perfect weather year round. It has the ocean and it has the mountains in beautiful California. LA should be like a perfect city. It's a huge city as well, so it should be easy to find room to develop in LA. And you have all of these things, and he's right. The city should be better than it is. I mean, right now, you have the Palisades fire. I think it was like 7,000 homes that were destroyed. Only a few hundred have even been rebuilt. Last year, you have riots in LA where the city actually like starts destroying itself, like destroying the infrastructure. And then you have all the taxpayer funds going to unnecessary programs like homelessness prevention. And a lot of it just turns into a grift, turns into total fraud. And so, when he says the city really could be a lot better and it should be, I totally agree with that. This is just a source that says Nithya Raman and Karen Bass pull out of the last LA mayoral debate last minute. And it's because they got destroyed in the first debate by Spencer Pratt so bad. That's like it's like a campaign move that like if you can't debate, just don't debate, because your numbers will drop even more if you do a bad debate than if you just didn't debate in the first place. And it takes us back to the best candidate, in my opinion, is usually the one that's willing to debate. Here we have to get into a little bit more of a conspiracy, so it gets kind of fun. During the LA fires, Karen Bass was out of the country. She wasn't in the country. She was asked by Biden to go to Ghana, which is a fun coincidence. And she also campaigned when she was running for the mayor for the last time that she wasn't going to leave the country, but she did, although Biden, who was president at the time, asked her to. So I guess you could say, that's a little bit different. But we have CBS like little video about this, about Karen Bass not being in the country during the Palisades fire. And it goes pretty deep, so we're going to check this out.
All right, now we jump to this. As a life-threatening wildfire tore through the LA neighborhood of the Pacific Palisades in early January of last year, our Jonathan Bigliotti was on the scene, you'll remember, witnessing the destruction firsthand.
We just arrived here in what is left of downtown Pacific Palisades, and I am overwhelmed by the scale of loss. Many people are going to return to homes that were lost, and even more important, their community completely gone.
Well, now, John's written a book about covering the Palisades fire and how local officials failed to prepare for a deadly disaster that he says could have been prevented. Torched, how a city was left to burn and the Olympic rush to rebuild LA is out today, and John is here with us right now this morning. Good morning, Jonathan. Well, congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
I know I'm among the first in line to pick this up and read it, although it's just part of your extensive experience covering disasters like this. And in your book, you write, quote, "That night, the fire did not have full control over who lived and who died. Human action did." Explain what exactly that means.
Errol, I covered this fire, the Palisades fire, with my incredible team from beginning to end. The fire was still burning as I listened to local leaders, including Mayor Karen Bass, blame this on climate change and extreme wind. And make no mistake about it.
And we covered that earlier in the video. So the LAFD claimed that during the fire, it was fueled by hurricane level 1 winds, which is about 74 miles per hour. But the winds were not even above 40 miles per hour. So you have the LA Fire Department and Karen Bass saying, oh, it was climate change, it was crazy winds. When in reality, the winds weren't actually that high. That was a lie.
Climate change is amplifying our weather and our extreme weather. But in the reporting of this book, Torch, what became very clear was this was a different kind of man-made disaster. You had officials that failed to imagine the worst case scenario, failed to prepare ahead of this fire weather arriving. When it did, when the fire did spark, there was a failure to respond. We're talking the National Weather Service had nearly a week of warnings that escalated in severity. The mayor, according to my sourcing, knew about this and still took a last-minute trip to Ghana.
Yeah, so there was the smaller fires on New Year's, which is like when a lot of people are setting off fireworks, and also it was a very dry time in LA. And so the like fire watch people for LA were like, yeah, a lot of that area is still hot, like there's a high risk for fires. And the mayor knew that and still took a trip out the country, even though she said that she wouldn't.
Part of a delegation and as part of President Biden's trip that he assigned her on. She left without informing those in control of the response where precisely she would be. An email was sent out saying,
Yeah, so she left. She didn't really tell everybody that was like in charge of running the city when she's gone, like where she was going to be. She kind of just left. Most likely because she campaigned that she wasn't going to leave, but Biden asked her to, so she did leave. So she probably, tried to make it hush hush. And then, of course, while she's gone, that's when the Palisades fire breaks out. And it gets even juicier than that. So there is this dude. His name is Brian Williams. And let's see if this is the only source we have on him. Yes. So he is the former deputy mayor of public safety for Los Angeles. That position is in charge of things like firefighting, and especially when the mayor is not in town, they're the ones that are going to be coordinating like how to put out a forest fire. This guy, the deputy mayor of public safety for Los Angeles, took a plea deal for making a bomb threat against City Hall and lying to LAPD officials about it. So this guy is supposed to be the one that's in charge of like preventing forest fires in LA under Karen Bass. And he got charged for putting in a fake bomb threat. And then he did end up getting fired before the fires happened, which is something that Spencer Pratt will say. He'll say like Karen Bass's deputy mayor was under house arrest during the time of the fires. That's true, but he had already been fired by Karen Bass a couple months beforehand. So the mayor was out of town during the fires, and there was no deputy mayor in charge of handling the fires because the last one had gotten fired for calling in a fake bomb threat. And that's how dysfunctional LA is right now. And it's so crazy, but true, that when Spencer Pratt talks about it, he sounds like a crazy MAGA conspiracy theorist. But really, the city is just that dysfunctional. And then here's another thing that Karen Bass did. So keep in mind, she is not in the city when the fire happens. So she's not able to like really do too much to help prevent these fires, to help try to save people. Her deputy mayor got fired for calling in a fake bomb threat. He's the one that's supposed to be in charge of dealing with these things when she's not in town. He got fired, so he's not there to deal with these things. And so Chief Crowley, that kind of, I guess, tried to take the lead, tried to do things, tried to like actually help the fire, help put out the fire. And Mayor Bass fired him because he was critical of her response to the fire. She wasn't even there. Her deputy mayor, who was supposed to be in charge of it, wasn't there either because he got fired for calling in the fake bomb threat. And it looks like in response to it's Kristen Crowley, trying to deal with the situation without the mayor or deputy mayor there. They were a little bit critical of how Mayor Bass handled the fire. And so Mayor Bass just fires them. And so you have like another instance of the dysfunction in the city of LA. And it really looks like Karen Bass has done a terrible job, not even just with the fires, but also with the homelessness and the fraud in the city. So if you want more info on Spencer Pratt, go to his like YouTube or TikTok channel. He has some pretty good stuff there. And it's easy to fact check things nowadays. So if he makes a crazy claim and you're like, oh, that can't be true, Karen Bass isn't a communist, well, just look it up. And you'll find out that, yes, Fidel Castro was her comandante in jefe, commander-in-chief, and she expressed sympathies when he died. And she was even part of a group that was investigated by the FBI in the 70s for recruiting individuals to be appointed somewhere in the U.S. government to provide Cuba with access to political, economic, and military intelligence. And like, this is not a joke. This is like a real thing. And there's so much more that we covered in the video. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe and check out other videos. We do videos like this once a week. And if there's any relevant information on LA, the homelessness, the crime rate, any of that stuff, the fraud, the Palisades fire that we didn't cover, that's relevant to this LA mayoral race with Spencer Pratt going against Karen Bass, leave a comment, let us know, and have a great night.